Welcome everyone. Innovation Circle is now back after a summer break, and yes, this is we're now full of energy, and I can see a lot of people showing up on the screen. Fantastic, great. Yeah, we were sitting here thinking about Innovation Circle, and we have accumulated quite a few. And let me do a quick reflection on what we actually done and what we are going to do today. And as some of you know, we started off this podcast last year. That was after the TOS ICP. And we had this ambition of trying to step by step kind of paint the picture of what transformative innovation is for all its diverse angles of incidence and how we talk about it. And there was a need to actually show the various perspectives of it. So we kind of started to build that jigsaw puzzle one by one. And over the last couple of months, as we were looking through the numbers of podcasts, it struck me that we have been into various conceptual conversations. We actually, first one was about what is a transformation. Let's start from basics. Where Björn Ola Linné, we discussed his book, and which was very sort of rewarding. And we have also discussed other concepts that we have launched within the network. The notion of strategic learning, we have revisited it. We also had a couple of more practical workshop or the podcasts, where we dove into different experience from different regions. The Western Balkans came up, and we have also discussed different kinds of industries. What's the difference working in a mature industry as opposed to something that is sort of an emerging industry? We also talked about contexts. How does transformative innovation in Europe play out in a global world? That was one of the themes in May, if I'm not mistaken, where we had Georges Arbache from the South American Development Bank reflecting over what we're doing in Europe. And all this have been kind of framed in the ways that we have tried to at least encapsulate everything that transformative innovation is sort of on the process of doing that. What adds to our understanding of innovation in general, that it puts another layer of how we do the experimentation and learning on the one hand. So the process, how that plays out, how do we rig an experimentation, and what consequences does it have for how we learn? That has been sort of one added layer to our understanding of innovation. And the other is to how to stimulate the demand side, the fact that society to a larger extent than earlier has to be involved, and creating links between sector innovations, for example, that we know quite a lot about, and create the spillovers and synergies necessary for things to actually come about. And how do you create those links? That would be the other kind of framing that we have used. So the picture is slowly emerging. What we haven't paid much attention to is actually different ways in which policies could be organized. Policies actually has three components. One being programs and the policy instruments that we use. That's how most people think about it. The other aspect is actually what kind of steering and what kind of organization of the work do we have. We tend to think about it as goal achievement, but there are other ways of doing it. The network is another one, and we will. And the third one is let the consumer or the addressee also define the goals to a larger extent. And the third part is learning. So the ways that we learn about things and put it back into the policy formulation on a continuous basis. We tend to forget the latter two. So what we're going to do today is actually to start reflecting upon another way of organizing ourselves in our work, and that is the mission orientation. And mission, as you know, have been very much in the forefront on the discussions on EU, but it's actually another steering model, which is now finally also showing results. And that's why it becomes so interesting to have Daniel Posch here, because Daniel has been working, he's from Bertelsmann Stiftung, and he's been working quite a lot in various reports that I noticed about actually kind of the operation on daily basis on mission orientation, on mission-oriented initiatives, I'd say. And the one who is going to, that has now read it and come in and kind of pursue this discussion is Nikolai Weissert from Partner Plus Leadership in Denmark. And Nikolai is also a team member. So yes, without further ado, please, gentlemen, get on with the show. We're eager to hear about mission orientation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mikael, and thanks to Edson for enabling these not just cross-border but also cross-professional discussions on some of the most crucial topics, at least in my opinion, concerning the transformation of our societies. And also, as you just said, thank you, Daniel, for taking the time and for sort of putting yourself out there in terms of sharing your thoughts on and your experiences with working with mission-oriented innovation policy approaches. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. We're going to be spending just about 30 minutes, you and I, talking about this, and then we're going to open the floor for the audience to pose questions and to engage in what we're saying. And the structure, I think, as we discussed earlier, will basically be the what's, the how, the what's, the whys, and the hows of a mission-oriented approach to innovation policy. But before getting to that, Daniel, maybe just briefly, if I could kindly ask you just to shortly introduce yourself and the work that the Bertelsmann Stiftung does in Germany.
Yeah, for sure. Also, it is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Daniel Posch. I'm project manager / researcher at Bertelsmann Stiftung for 3 years already. I'm a trained political economist who has been working for as a public policy advisor previously, and I'm very much into industrial policy and innovation policy. And how we work at Bertelsmann Stiftung is we perform both research and advocacy on several topics, such as economic policy, innovation policy, and health policy. And I'm in the economics department, where we deal with innovation and economic policy. And yeah, what we basically we engage with mission orientation and missions since 2018, and I had the honor to join them 3 years ago and dive deeper into this topic.
And just to clear it out of the way, I'm eager also to get to the part of the discussion where we talk about the why do you work this way, and not least how you do it, but just for everybody in the room, maybe we should start just briefly defining what are we talking about when we're talking about a mission-oriented innovation policy approach.
Yeah, I mean, there are loads of different definitions, and the one we are using is that we start at what is a mission, and the mission is for us a mission is a translation of a grand challenge into a doable, manageable problem that involves a broad range of different actors, that involves participation of stakeholders. It involves clearly defined goals, and it goes beyond the STI sphere, policy sphere, and it should be ambitious and cross-cutting in nature. Cross-cutting meaning that policy fields, sectors, and a mission should transform society. That is basically what we see, how we define what a mission is. And mission-oriented policy is basically the approach on how to carry out that mission, carry out these translation processes from the societal grand challenge to the actual implementation and the transformative change.
And Daniel, how does, well, that is a positive definition, if so to speak. To go into that, how does that differ from other approaches to how to steer the society and enable transformation?
Well, the huge difference is that conventional policy, like we saw that, and maybe we argue that the rise of mission-oriented, or the rise of missions and this policy approach is due to the fact that conventional policy approaches are not sufficient to address like grand societal problems such as climate change, because climate change is cross-cutting in nature, and especially if you look at Germany, where you have like a very pronounced departmental principle, like coordination or carrying out policies across departments is not very common, is not very widespread. So yeah, this differs in terms of coordination. It differs in terms of participation and involvement of stakeholders. In order to achieve transformational change, you need private actors to act differently. You need both the supply and the demand side. And yeah, so it's basically a coordination thing. It is this approach also differs in the way that different logics are at play. The goal should be clear, but the way to achieve the goal is quite open. And this is not the typical kind of doing like policy making. And also the interactions between the public sector and private actors is not like the approach on how to interact with them is not very common. Like there's a requirement, mission-oriented policy making, like if you believe the scholars and also the first reports on how mission-oriented policymaking is carried out, if you believe that, it requires transformational change, requires skin in the game for private actors, and the conventional policy approach does not cannot achieve this, or not in any case, not in every case.
And I mean, that is also, well, you could maybe argue that sort of just makes clear the complexity of the task at hand, but doesn't it also, I mean, enhance the complexity of making policy to some extent? I mean, I can't help but thinking, sat here, that diving into a mission-oriented approach here will require, I mean, a vast amount of time spent on stakeholder management or bringing stakeholders together. Is that something you should consider? And also, I can't help but thinking the competencies or capacities needed in order to work in this way with policy innovation or innovation policy must also differ, in contrast to traditional approaches to policy, to the way we make policies.
Yes.
Or do you see it the same way?
No. I totally agree. If you need transformative change requires broad societal activation, and if you consider that most federal governments, or the administrative structure, or the administrative body has a very clearly defined way to interact with citizens, with companies, and so on. But if you need if you need others to transform and the whole system to transform, then you need new sorts of interaction and room to maneuver, and also like a different organizational culture, more flexibility. Yeah, so of course it has a lot of challenges. It comes with a lot of challenges and has a lot of requirements. And some political administrative structures do not live up to these requirements that they are demanding. So before talking about missions, one should ask the question whether a topic or the problem should be addressed by a mission-oriented approach, of course. But this mission-oriented innovation policy is one approach.
And of course, what I'm aiming at here is also that in order to enable societies and central governments or local governments to work in this way, a change in the way they are organized and the way they work and the capacities they have must be required. At least that's what I'm thinking when you describe the approach this way. And so maybe you could dive a bit into, Daniel, how you as a Stiftung at the Bertelsmann Stiftung has worked with contributing to the agenda, to the capacity building. So both not just pushing the discourse, but also the implementation of the practice, as Michael mentioned earlier.
Yeah, we started early on by conducting investigations, or by coming up with investigations from abroad, and publishing them, and showing that showing a wider audience that abroad different approaches to policy making are already in place, or at least they try. And we organized, we came up with a network, organized events together with other think tanks and other organizations, for example, the OECD, to point at certain structural barriers and weaknesses we identified in the political administrative structure in Germany. And we also were looking for other stakeholders to talk to them, and not only foster that. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. We did not only foster the debate and shared our ideas. We also proactively contacted public servants and people working in the policy process, and asking them, what is it, do you see the problem, and how to support them, but not only when it comes to events openly, but also we supported them with resources, with studies, and so on. And the first two studies were quite widely recognized. So we got invitations to consultation processes and workshops and discussions, and we carried out these workshops. So you can clearly see that since 2018, people in Germany in the policy bubble did not only recognize that this mission orientation might be a nice way to solve problems, but from recognizing this, the awareness has not only grown, but also they made some certain steps towards formulation and changing the structure. So this has been very fascinating to observe and to work in that.
So is what you're saying, if you don't mind me asking, that you were not necessarily in the beginning welcomed with open arms, but you've slowly worked on the central governments, the administrations, and taking this in? Or
I think changes this is not. I'm to be totally honest. Of course, people in the administration were aware of these problems, and everyone is. But change is always hard. Change is always requires. It comes with pain, and everywhere when politics is involved and different interests are involved, nothing is easy. But we try to position ourselves as a constructive partner, and not only as an actor who criticizes all the time, but as a discussant and a constructive partner. And there were also the things we came up with were quite common sense in the academic and policy bubble. We collaborated very closely with one of the biggest research institutes in Germany working on innovation policy, but also the expert committee for innovation and research agreed broadly with this change and with this need to change. So
actually, they understood why you were the problem identification, or
yes.
or how you'd phrase
yes.
this. But I'm still curious, Daniel. If you were now where you're standing right now, if you were to sort of phrase or sort of capture in the most significant change you've experienced in the German context, and maybe if I can ask you to do that, and what you think you've done, if you were to focus on that has contributed to this most significantly? And when I'm asking it's of course, when I'm sat here thinking, what can I do to contribute to this? Are there any lessons learned in the German context that I could sort of utilize in a Danish context, for instance, or maybe in other contexts? And that's of course why I'm asking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me start with the easier question. The biggest step or the biggest change that has been quite fascinating for me was the leap from the high-tech strategy 2018 to the future strategy from last year, or by the end of from last year, because nowadays this leap was innovation policy has now is been viewed as a comprehensive policy. It's like this mission-oriented approach has been taken more seriously. One can read that in this in the recent future strategy, and they also started to change the organizations by coming up with interministerial or interdepartmental teams who are responsible for the mission progress. And of course, there are a lot of, like, if you look beneath the surface, there are still a lot of problems, a lot of things that are not addressed. We can talk about this as well, but this change or this step has been quite fascinating. And we also published a paper on why this is not enough and how to address this properly, and what are the downsides and the advantages of this. But overall, this change has been quite fascinating. And yeah.
And if you were to point at it, how did you contribute to that? I mean, what enabled that change? And what is your part of that change?
I think we as an organization and as policy, as researchers who contribute to the daily debate on innovation policy in Germany, and by doing events and stuff, this we are of course one puzzle in the big picture, and point at some ideas, point at some ways to do. I think, yeah, one little puzzle in the big picture.
Has something changed in the context? I mean, what has enabled this? I mean, you've contributed events, publishing, or at least gathering and disseminating knowledge in research papers and policy briefs and so on. And you've gathered people in order to contribute to the dissemination of ideas and knowledge as well. But something must have happened. Like, isn't there, like, there's been a crucial tipping point for this approach in Germany, or has something happened, or has it just incrementally, slowly happened from where you're sitting?
Well, I don't know. Silo formation or the silo mentality is not over yet, not at all. And I don't think it will be over soon. But to identify, I'm not really sure. Some people would argue that we're living in a times of overlapping emergencies, and if you have emergencies all the time and do troubleshooting all the time, policymakers might forget in these times of overlapping emergencies that there are long-run transformative changes, and like focusing on this on the long-run transformative changes might be. Of course, everyone knows that this is advisable, but I think some would argue that this overlapping emergencies convinced the responsible policymakers to carry out that step. That's for one reason, and the second one is I would give some credit to the Fraunhofer Research Institute for Innovation and System Research, because their evaluation of the previous research strategy, their outreach and their expertise, significantly contributed to the fact that they saw that we should try it differently. Yes.
So what you're saying, there's a moment right now there's a moment politically right now where everybody would be prone to actually listen to this. So are you advising all of us to then push and push and push, because now is the moment?
I wouldn't say that the moment is now. I think the moment could come again during like next year. Yeah.
Yeah. Coming back to something you also mentioned earlier is the current state of affairs in Germany when it comes to this approach, and you sort of hinted it that it's not it that now it's done. We've said, I mean, we fixed this. There's a lot of work to do still. If you were to sort of describe what is the current state of affairs, and when you look into the futures, what is to be done, or what are the burning platforms going forward?
Yeah, as I said, the most recent strategy for of the government for the future, or for innovation policy in the future, made a huge step towards a more comprehensive mission-oriented approach. They changed the structure. They established 6 different mission teams working on 6 different. I would say, I wouldn't call these missions. I'd call them 6 different overarching topics, and these teams are responsible to revise, to formulate, to concretize, and evaluate the missions. That's a good step. But so far, the strategic level is not included in the whole process. So politically, the state secretaries or the ministries, I would say that once politicians have skin in the game, or like are actually involved and get and has an incentive to push this forward, or to work on several topics, then the whole mission team, or then the whole governance model improves. This is also what the Commission on Innovation and Research says. So you have, of course, some things, room to improve. There's some room to improve in the design, but like the awareness is there. Also, another example might be that there's a strategy currently running on circular economy, on how to implement a circular economy, or how to increase the share, or how to increase the circular economy overall in Germany. And they also argued in favor of a cross-cutting, mission-oriented approach, that they need a platform that is able to coordinate and act as an, I would call it, mission owner. So yeah, the idea is there, and the awareness is there, and they try to maybe, I'm sure, like we are talking to some people in the government, and I can say that yeah, some people want to bring that forward, and let's wait for the next election.
I want to get back to the politicians, because I know that you've done some research on the importance of not necessarily politicians, but what happens when you change from a national level to a regional level. And I know you have some thoughts and ideas on the importance of the level of ideological, or at least politics locally and regionally. But before going there, in Denmark, we've got the Danish Innovation Foundation as well, and they've defined 4 innomissions, and they have innomission teams as well, basically in the same way as you described, or at least to some extent as in Germany. And I know at the moment one of the current contemplations are what supportive structures need to be in place to help these mission teams succeed, working with basically making the change that they are, that's their purpose, but also working with strategic learning, stuff like that. Are there any experiences in Germany on supportive structures that enable these teams at the moment, that you could maybe share with us?
Well, there are suggestions or recommendations for supportive structures, supportive structures and other recommendations. But some supportive structures might be a budget. If you have a budget and the competency to give financial, like to have the commitment, to give others commitment for financial project, or for project that cost money, basically. These are like the basic ones. And of course, we defined some functional requirements of a mission owner, and some of them, like the first one, is to be able to set up and carry out the strategy process. So a mission owner needs to be able to carry out the strategy process, and a mission owner, or the organization, the entity, needs to like have a lot of people coming from different backgrounds, knowing the industry, not only the public sector. So this is another, needs to be staffed, and there has to be a heterogeneous like a human resource program. And the third functional requirement might be like political competences, or like being having closely ties to the political decision makers. And like this government committee, maybe a government committee might be a way to address this.
Before opening the floor for questions from the audience, just one of the recent papers on the regional perspective on the mission-oriented approach, Daniel. Could you maybe illuminate us a bit on your findings in your recent papers, and then I will open the floor.
Yeah, for sure. We conducted a study on regional missions in Germany, and we asked the question: firstly, are there any, and are there any initiatives one could call missions, or and secondly, if there are any, if there are some missions, what are the structural factors or the factors that promoted success of the implementation of these missions? And we did 4 in-depth case studies and found out that, of course, there are structural factors such as financial resources and capabilities at hand, structures like being able to draw on the personal capacity, on knowledge. But also there are governance-oriented factors, and some of them are as follows. Having a mission owner, having a politician, an organization, a department, or a bunch of people who are really interested in change was key in every single case study. Secondly, having a high political prioritization. They achieved this, most of them achieved this by communicating well, communicating transparently, and showing that their goal or their vision is important and legitimate for the people. These are like the structural factors that promoted the change or the success. And we found out that regional missions are much provide some advantages compared to these very big national, supranational missions, because you can people feel the impact immediately, which mobilizes them or mobilizes other stakeholders to participate in the process. They are much more pragmatic. Pragmatic implementation dominates compared to national missions, and also on a regional level, you can change the course much more easily, and this iterative and reflexive development of the activities has been key. And all of our interview partners would have described this as a big advantage.
So politicians don't have to be a part of the problem, but they can also be a part of the solution. Talking about this.
Yes, on the regional level, I would totally agree that politicians can be part of the solution, and sometimes are.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Kjell Håkan, you have raised your hand for a question or a comment, and then I've noted that Emily has put a comment in the chat as well, that as a follow-up. But Kjell Håkan.
Thank you. Thank you for an interesting dialogue here. I would like to turn into this kind of the implementation issues, because of course there's some good things that, you know, the cross-cutting collaboration, cross-cutting coordination, and the mobilization that you receive through, you know, missions. And mission has been usually compared to the Man on the Moon or the Manhattan Project, which was really more engineering project. But do you have to? Can you share any thoughts or reflections on what I feel is the most problematic implementation issue? And that is that if you look at the desired outcomes you want on system transformation, they are usually on the macro level. And we know that societies are, you know, in theory, complex adaptive systems. So many of the outcomes you want on the system level is emergent properties of the system that you cannot find in the parts. So how do you combine mission orientation on the macro level with sustainable businesses on the micro level? And how do you balance cooperation with competition? Because we know competition drives really innovation on the micro level, but still we are putting missions on the macro level, associating them with emergent properties, which also means that you cannot, in my view, implement it through traditional management by objectives, because the objectives are emergent properties that you cannot find in subparts. So you cannot use this divide and conquer kind of approach to it. So there's a difference between what I mean is directionality and goal orientation. Directionality is associated, in my view, with innovation, system transformative innovation process. While goal orientation is something else. It's very engineering oriented, very predictive kind of oriented, and of course with the emergent properties, there's a genuine uncertainty how to reach them. So these are implementation issues that I don't see addressed or discussed when it comes to mission orientation. Is one of the critics I have had around mission orientation.
I don't know if you'd like to answer right away, Daniel.
Let's. This is the billion-dollar question, but let's have some more than I answer.
Yeah. Lovely. Emily, I don't know if you wanna pose your questions saying it, or I can read it out loud. Of course, I could do that as well.
Oh, sure. It's nice to be face to face, even if digital.
Yeah.
No, my question was about we talk a lot about the kind of the conceptual orientations of this new policy approach, and I'm thinking about getting down to operational action, and where do you start, and can you use existing tools, existing instruments? So I've worked for 20 years in the field of cluster policy, and these kind of instruments, systemic instruments, have been in place and exist in many geographies around the world. Are these kind of support structures for collaborative action covering, mobilizing different actors in an ecosystem already kind of mobilized around a common direction, maybe not towards a particular mission, but they're mobilized? Can they be used to kind of implement and manage missions, or are completely new support structures needed for the mission-oriented approach?
Ooh, Daniel, over to you.
Yeah. Okay. I will start with the second question, even though both quite hard to answer. Of course, if we talk, I would say that if we talk about mission-oriented policy, we also need to talk about governance structures, and existing tools and existing governance structures and existing structures are key. If we leave them out and just try to build something new and do not make use of them, the whole change, you cannot mobilize. Other stakeholders will not participate in that, and are neither willing nor capable of participating in the desired way, right? And so of course these existing structures need to be used to a certain extent, My answer, I can only refer to this existing structures when it comes to collaborative action, from a regional perspective. We saw that regional collaborative structures in the city of Osnabrück, for example, they worked as a catalyst They made use of them, made use of this cooperative there. They tried to increase the regional value creation, and they made use of an existing cooperative of actors in order to achieve that goal. So in theory, and also at some level in practice, it is possible. I don't have the silver bullet. I don't have the answer on how to do that. But we saw in our regional studies that this has already been thought of.
Before getting into Charlotten's question and comment, I as a moderator would be interested in, Emily, what would your perspective be on this, having worked with these kind of structures that are to support collaborative action?
Yeah, I was very happy to hear, Daniel, your response. That you have seen that it works on a regional level. I think it would be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think it's a lot of investments have been made over a long period of time to mobilize actors in these systemic, commons, these collaborative structures. And I think that in theory, I think it should work. And I think but it does require some tweaking in terms of directionality and the purpose of the action and the driving factors. And there's some things that need to be changed. And we've had an ongoing discussion with some other cluster researchers. It's okay, is it a new tool? Is it sharpening the existing tool? Is it repurposing the tool? And we kind of concluded that it's a repurposing of the tool. It's a tool. It works to mobilize collaborative action, mobilizing multiple stakeholders from different fields towards a collaborative action, but it's repurposing. So the purpose is not competitiveness and economic growth, but it's the same kind of reordering of priorities as the three framings. Instead of primarily economic growth with spillovers into environmental and social change, it's okay, your eye on the prize is the environmental and social change with spillovers economics as well, or at least on kind of same playing field, that you're not, the eye is not economic growth solely.
May I also add, Charlotte, here is I think one of the things that I've been advocating is that we need to move. We have been for so many years thinking of collaboration in terms of consortia, different kind of consortia that are applying for money from EU or Sweden, Vinnova or whatever. But I think this kind of transformative innovation policy requires more community-oriented development. And a community allows both collaboration and competition. And what Emily has been working, I think, is more community-oriented structures, which I think are more important than our tradition to focus on consortia-based collaboration.
Yes, I agree, Charlotte. The Swedish ecosystem is very community oriented. It's not a closed club. It's an open community, or it's an amoeba.
Daniel.
Yeah, with regard to the implementation question, this is actually the $1 billion question. Yeah, I do not have a proper answer. I can only say that missions by itself are subject to the tension of top down versus bottom up, and to find one can only define the direction and some goals and agree on some goals, but the way to this goal is open and should be open, and is about to be discovered, right? So I don't think that there is any like all the academic publications and all the research that is done on that approach is still in its infancy. Like countries and regions have started to carry out missions almost like at max 15 years ago. So if we talk about implementation issues, or if we like with substance, currently we're like, this is a moving target. So I cannot give a proper answer. I'm sorry.
May I
Absolutely.
follow-up question is are people even aware of this? Because many times when I read, even if you go to Matsukato's books, it turns out to get into this kind of portfolios of R&I projects. I have not seen research, PhD research, and I've not seen implementation that are really making aware of this kind of problem with complexity. You know, that many of the properties you are putting in the objectives or in the directionality are emergent properties that are not found in the subpart. So and we know from theory that it's not the objects in itself, it's in the interactions of organizations and humans that creates the outcomes. But are people even aware of that? Those that are talking about mission orientation and implementation of mission orientation, I have not seen that awareness but I haven't not read everything, but I'm very concerned that we are not even aware of this.
If you want, I can send you some papers, I think, where the awareness is quite pronounced afterwards.
And just to get a bit into that, Daniel, what does the awareness concern in relation to this? If you can,
yeah. I would say yes. People who do research on that topic still they are aware of the fact that what they are doing research on has been discovered or has been in place for less than 2 decades in practice. So most of the papers by now are on tools to evaluate these kind of policies, on how to make sense of these kind of policies and activities, and how to and not a lot of them have access to data on how implementation went out, because there is none. Like there's one scholar, Dominique Fauré, I think, he said that one has to start with the clear goal. Directionality is key, but it is still a discovering process, and it emerges over time. You cannot you can only set the path together and agree on some goals, but the actual discovery process and the actual outcome is not yet known.
So maybe just as there's another question actually, or a comment at least, from Fritz.
Yeah, thank you. I think I just want to follow up on that, because it's such an essential argument that you just made, Daniel. I find that all the time in my work. So we are actually in the implementation of missions in Germany, like we're working basically on all you described right now. And I think there's a bit of the dilemma that we see there, that the place where you formulate those missions is like a very top-down approach, and like the place where you actually have the knowledge to learn, you know, like have this immersion knowledge is a bottom-up. So what we see is, like, depending on the level that we address, we get very different outcomes. So we oftentimes like address the statement C level, and then we get back, we have all the missions figured out already. They're laid down now, like coalition contracts or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you talk to the offices, like, or the ordinary bureaucrat, they tell you, yeah, we could do all this like collaboration and cross-ministerial work, but we don't have the backup from, you know, our higher ups, and therefore like we are basically stopped at the part where we would like to create and like immersion knowledge and objectives, but we are stopped at that point. And navigating exactly this dilemma, I think, is like the crucial challenge, like that we are working right now in the implementation stage.
Yeah, totally get that. If you do not, if the formulation process is not set up like if the formulation process does not match with the context and with the topic itself and how with the structure of the stakeholders, then you make mistakes you cannot correct in a later stage, or that is very, very challenging to do the design level. And yeah.
I mean, we could go on and on about this, and that would be lovely as well. We've got 60 minutes, so unfortunately, I have to sort of start closing the discussion. But Daniel, springing from this basically, and because I think there's a lot of experiences to be shared and quite little research. So, if you were to say something that if you were to answer, what do you think that we as a network here could have, what could be valuable to share experiences on going forward? Also, I think in the light of this discussion, maybe in terms of implementation or whatever you think, but are there any topics you think would be of great value to keep sharing experiences on?
Yes, definitely. I think experiences about how what went wrong and what went right on the way to like during the implementation phase and from the start until the end, sharing experiences or inviting people or organizations who actually try to carry that out, and tell you about bottlenecks, challenges, and how to solve them. Sharing these experience might be key for the future, not only for scholars but also for practitioners.
What a wonderful invitation! And with that, I would like to hand back the words or the floor to Olivia and Mikael.
So yes, thank you so much, Nikolai and Daniel, for this great discussion, and of course to our audience for all the interesting questions. And now let's move to our game segment. For those who don't really know the rules yet, we'll play 1 truth and 2 lies. Our guest has kindly sent us 3 statements in advance about their life, from which only 1 is true. And now we'll have a chance to vote and find out which story actually happened. Shall we start maybe from Daniel? I will read your statements and we'll launch the poll on the screen so we can all vote. Let me put it on the screen now. So, Daniel, in 2012, I turned down the offer to become a professional football player. My supervisor's stink allergy forced me to conduct the final negotiations for a research center in a hallway. Interesting. I witnessed Elon Musk being rejected from an exclusive German club. Let's launch the poll and let's find out which statement is true. You can all see now.
Goodness.
Which one do you vote?
We take that one.
Great. Okay, so for now, 3rd statement wins. Let's see if everyone voted.
Is that a hope or?
Okay, it seems the 3rd statement.
Oh, here's things happening.
Things happening, okay.
Yes.
Oh, so it's
actually a tie. It's a tie. My goodness.
It's the 1st and the 3rd.
Yeah.
Daniel, can you reveal which one is true?
I can, yeah. The fact that I live in Berlin might be so it might be logical that I witnessed Elon Musk being rejected from an exclusive German club, but that was a lie. And also, I've been playing football my whole life, but I didn't turn down the offer to become a professional player. So the 2nd statement is the true one.
Nice.
My goodness. So we were all mostly wrong.
Exactly.
That shows we have to meet more to get to know you.
Yeah.
And let's move on to Nikolai. So here are your statements. I created a viral YouTube video that has over 10 million views. I once had a pint with Boris Johnson. I was contestant on Who wants to be a millionaire and reach the final question? Very interesting. You see, legible.
Yeah. Yeah, why not? I mean, Jesus.
Okay, the third statement
Oh.
wins, but there are some changes still.
Seems to have stabilized.
It seems the third statement then. Nikolai, should you reveal the truth?
Well, I would wish that the third statement would be the right one. I am way too old a man inside to have made a viral YouTube video. So the truth of the matter is that I once had a pint with Boris Johnson.
Oh.
At some point, we have a pint about that pint.
Yes.
Yes.
I'd love to hear that story too.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, you see, there are things being revealed here at the end of the tunnel. Fantastic conversation. I truly liked it, and it was actually just the first of a series. I'd say it's a little bit too much, but actually we're going to talk about mission orientation once again. As I stated in the beginning, this is actually a little bit of a leap forward. Now that we kind of cover this stuff, this jigsaw puzzle, and start getting a sense for what we mean by transformative innovation, we can now dive into how the complicated issue of transformative innovation policy. That is actually less the instruments and the program, but rather the coordination of the learning. So this was a great example of the coordinate, or a great dive into the challenges, opportunities of coordination and steering, and how different it becomes when you start thinking about mission orientation. And lovely. What we're going to do now is actually almost like we hadn't planned it this way, but it becomes the logical sequence of the conversation, which is then how do you embed learning in these transformative innovation missions? And the one who is going to moderate that session will be Alex Glennie, another ETIN member working for Nesta, and she will have Abigail Stocker from Innovate UK as the in Daniel's position and sharing her experiences on the topic. So we've gone from transformative innovation to the steering of it to the embedding of the learning. That will be a nice sequence. So please join us in 2 weeks at 4 o'clock, same hour, and hope to see you all back. It was a great conversation once again. Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Right, thank you.